Hi everyone, my name is Sébastien Lagree. I'm the creator and founder of Lagree Fitness. Today I want to talk about the differences and similarities between the M3 on my left and the M3s on my right. First of all, let's talk about the dimensions, okay? The M3s came about a year and a half after the M3, and I realized on the M3 what I wanted to do is I wanted to make the machine more athletic because there started to be a huge shift in the Lagree method where we started to do, right around when the M3 was introduced, we started to do a lot less laying on the back exercise, and we started to do a lot more crawling, planking, standing exercise. So I needed to have basically more places to fit the hands, the feet, and so forth. So we call them anchoring points. So you'll see that the evolution from the M3 on to the M3s, M3K, M3X, and so on, that we're adding more anchoring points. So for the M3s, what I did is actually make the machine longer because I felt that a need for more anchoring points, especially on the platforms. So when you look at the length of the M3, you're talking about 117 inches of usable length. If you add the stabilizing bars on the front of the M3, the length is jumping to 125. You're only going to use about 117 inches on the machine. The length on the M3s jumped from 117 to 127. So the M3, even though it has the same frame as M3s, even though it has the same frame as the M3, is actually longer because when you look at the front platform and the rear platform, they protrude further out. 127 for the M3s, and 117 for the M3. As far as the width is about the same. We have looking at about a 32 inches width, on the carriage. Same thing, 32 inches width, on the M3s. The footprint is gonna be about the same, even though this machine is a bit longer, 10 inches longer. I recommend about 100 square feet of space, okay? Same thing with the Megaformer series, and I was talking about in earlier videos, comparing the Micro or the Mini to the M2. When you buy an M3, either for at home or a studio, it goes into a dedicated space. So you'll find the M3 and M3s either in a dedicated space at home, or if it's a studio, you'll see that those are boutique fitness and they have 10, 15, whatever M3s. The M3 and the M3s are not machines that you're gonna use for a class, and then when you're done with the class, let's say now you want to use the room for do a yoga class after that, you're not going to be able to move these machines around. Some of my licensees have put wheels on those machines to move them around. Even that takes an incredible amount of time, and these machines were not meant to be stored away when not in use, okay? So you need a dedicated space for these two machines, otherwise it's going to be a headache, all right? Now, when we talk about the features of the M3s versus the M3, very simple, okay? The frame is the same, so the frame is always the same on all M3s, and that's why we can have an M3 platform with an M3s carriage and an M3s rear platform, for example. That's easy to do because all these elements belong on the same frame. So we just change the elements, the frame stays the same. M3 was an improvement over the M2, so the M2 was kind of a rectangle platform and that was it. On the M3, I wanted to add a little bit more shape to it so that you had more anchoring points for the wrist, for the elbows, and so on. So on the M3, I added basically a set of handles on the back end of the platform, and then I cut the corners on the front, and then you have more like a V position or W position for the wrist placement. Using this product for about a year, I realized that, well, people are not really grabbing the outside of the platform over here. It's just too wide. Even for me, I'm 6'4", I'm not gonna put my hands out over there to grab the platform. So what did I do? First of all, the M3s was the first time that I actually changed from a more rectangular shape for the platform to a cross-like shape. I realized that a cross-like was probably the optimum shape for a platform. So over here on the front platform, you have a cross, and then I added also a second pair of handles. So you have some handles on the back of the platform, and now I added another pair of handles on the front of the platform. So now you have two positions for exercise when you do wheelbarrow or when you do a bear, or if you just want to do like a walking bear or walking wheelbarrow where you have your hands and then you switch out to the front and then go in the back, right? So now you have more anchoring options for your hands on the M3s. And I added also the rails. So there's rails over here. These are important because when I talk about the M3s versus M3K, you're gonna see a huge shift already in the design of the front platform, okay? So I added those rails. And then these rails over here, the idea with this was you could actually do an exercise like the bear, and then you could go up on the side rails over here, and then you could also pull yourself up to these other handles. So it's kind of like adding like a staircase basically, or a stairway, you know. If you want to go from a wheelbarrow or a bear to a catfish and so on, you could easily just go up on these side rails and come up on the handles. And the idea was to minimize the transition that it takes you to go from one exercise to the next. So that was the idea behind the M3s. So the M3s platform is way more sophisticated than the M3. So more anchoring points. It's wider. It's about the same width, but it's longer in length. And it has, again, the inclusion of the side rails and the second set of handles. I'm gonna jump on the back very quickly. The back end received the exact same treatment. So the rear platform on the M3 is the same as the front. The rear platform on the M3s is the same as the front. Sometime you might walk to a studio and realize that the platform on both ends are different. And that's because the licensee, whoever bought the machine, wanted to customize that machine. Not all the studio will have the same M3s, and that's an important point to remember. But that's the M3, M3s. Now let's talk about the carriage. When I designed the M3, I obviously recognized the need for like a wider carriage. So I made the carriage wider. We had the same eyelet, same opening as we did for the M2. And then what I did is I added 4 cups on the side, but these were not really anchoring points. They were just to cover where we attached the straps and the cables. So they were basically just a way to make that a little nicer looking. As I was using the M3, I realized that these could actually also potentially be used as part of an exercise. So what I did is on the M3s, I combined the eyelet with these cups into one large opening. And I did the same thing on the front. I'm like, well, if I'm gonna have 2 large openings on the back of the carriage where the springs attach, then I'm gonna have also a wider opening on the front of the carriage. And this is why now you have this wide opening. Also by that time, we started to do a lot more flying exercise. So the flying series of exercise started to pop up around 2012, 2013. This is when we started to do a lot of flying and leaning exercise. For the flying series, you do need more anchoring points. And I said in earlier videos that if you're gonna do a flying mega donkey kick, a flying scrambled eggs, a flying froggy kick, for example, I don't really recommend them on the M3 and M2, but I do recommend them on the M3K and on the M3S as well, because you actually have those anchoring points. You have like this literally long opening over here on the carriage, which really allows you to anchor your feet, get the proper support for your ankles for these exercises. When you look at the M3S over here, you can start already seeing the reasoning when I went to the M3K. Because on the M3K, I don't know if you remember, but the bar that goes on the carriage, that was the same bar that we have on the M3. Well, on the M3K, that bar goes the entire length of the machine and it wraps around the corner, right? Eventually, that bar became the Ring of Fire and it became a full continuous bar. And that's what you have on the Evo, on the Micro, the Mini Pro. So you can already see the beginning of that thought process. And so over here, we have way more anchoring point on the M3S. So the M3S is still not like the M3K, but you can see the logic with this anchoring point. You know, as far as everything else, you know, we keep everything else the same. You know, the numbers are about the same. On the M3S, this was the first machine where I decided to put an indicia. So what are the indicia? The indicias are the marks, the numbers, the lines, the colors on the pad. So on the M3, you know, we don't have any indicias on the platform or the rear platform, but we have them on the carriage. So you have the number 1, 2, 3, 4, it goes to 11. You have a white center line, and we have also red crossing line. And these are basically reference points that you use during the class. And then I thought, well, these work so well on the carriage, why not having them on the platform? So it worked out really well because we had a 1 and an 11. So all I had to do is put a 0 on the middle of the platform. So the M3S was the first megaformer to receive an indicia on the front platform. We have the white center line that continues with the carriage, and then we have a red line, and then 0. And essentially, the 0 represents the intersection of your collarbone and your spine, and that's exactly the placement that you want there. So the 0 is a very central point. It's a great reference point. That's the first time that we put them on the M3S. So on the M3S, you start really seeing basically the future of all the other machines. We do the same thing on the back end. So on the back end, we have a number 12 now, since on the carriage, the last number is 11, so we have 12. So that kind of gives you a little bit more direction. Something else too that we did over the M2 and that I forgot to talk about in the last video. On the M2, the front and the back are identical, right? So you have these 2 handles on the front, 2 handles on the back. And for many times, you know, when we shot the exercise videos, people always were confused when you do a side profile if we were shooting the front or the back. And it became very confusing for people. So when I did the M3, I did those rotating handles. First of all, the front is used differently than the back anyway. So we started to have these multiple handles on the front, which start to give the Megaformer more of a front look and a rear end, right? So over here, you have the same thing on the M3s. We still have these handles over here that rotate, and then you can start seeing more of the front. So now we have a 0 and we have these handles with multiple anchoring points and a 0. So now we help to further determine what is the front of the machine and also what's the back. When you buy a machine for your house, you're not gonna care because a lot of the technology that I developed is for a class purpose. And I've made the comments about Ferrari. You know, Ferrari was obsessed with winning the race, and they put all the technology put in the car was to really win those races. And then some of that technology got bypassed on to the street cars. I make machines for studios. I don't make machines for home use. Now, the new wave, the next generation of machines starting on the Megaformer X will have both in mind because a lot of people now want to buy the Megaformer for the house. And so I will make a hybrid Megaformer that also has the home use in mind as well. But like I said, all the technology from the M3s is really for the classes. The M3s costs more than the M3. When you're licensee, you're talking about just a $500 price difference, so it's not that much. You know, that's just if you have the M3s. If you want to have the static handles, we will have a different videos on this. So if you want to have the static handles, you can. You can also put them on the M3, so now that increase the price. If you want the triangular grip on the static handles, it also bring the price up. You can equip your M3 and your M3s with a new super fast spring change. That brings the price up. I am going to talk very soon about a new spring change called the Lightning, and the Lightning will also affect the price of those machines. So you can start to modify those machines to be a little closer to an Evo, but it's not going to be the Evo, right? Because the Evo comes with all this technology, and we will do, and I think we've already done a video comparing the Evo 1 to the M3, and we'll do, of course, the Evo 2 and so on. So that's about the difference that we have, you know, on the machines. As far as the exercises, you know, there's not any exercise that you cannot do on one machine versus the other. But again, and I want to say that again for the 3rd, 4th, 5 times, there are some exercises that I would personally not do on the M3. Super lunge, scrambled eggs, flying froggy kick, flying squirrel, you know, flying mega donkey kick, any flying leaning exercise, no problem on the M3s because now we have the opening on the M3, so which kind of gives your body the proper support. We don't have those opening on the M3, okay? So on the M3s we do, and they support those exercise. On the M3 we don't. And that's pretty much because when we started to use the M3, you know, we started to do a lot less laying on the back exercise. We started to do more dynamic exercise, more core and endurance type of exercise because that's where the clientele was, you know. The clientele demanded for this type of exercise. So as I was using the M3, I decided, well, you know, I'm gonna add these points on the M3s. It's not because I say you can't do this exercise that you can. I will not personally do this exercise, but you can. So there's really no difference as far as the amount of exercise that you can do between the M3 and the M3s. If you are a studio and you're considering between those two, okay, just know that the M3s is a more athletic line, athletic. So the M3s, M3K, M3X, Evo line, okay, right, we cut the cord at the M3. These are more athletics and more endurance lines. So you can do more the Lagree today because Lagree has really morphed itself into a core strength and endurance workout. So the M3s is really the first machine to do this. Also, in that time between the M3 and M3s, I have the introduction of the ramp. And the ramp, because you're gonna lift the machine up on the back, you definitely need more places to hook your feet and your hands. So the M3s was developed with the ramp in mind. And then when we went from the M3s to the M3K, we refined these points because now we actually had the ramp, and then we started to make some modifications to the carriage and the platform with the M3K. For studio, you know, it depends. If you want to do a more metal workout, let's say, the M3, you're fine. If you want to do really Lagree, hardcore, you want to follow the technology, all that stuff, I'd say M3s definitely over the M3. If you're a person at home and you want a Megaformer, you're going to be fine with the M3. You do not need to get an M3s or an M3K or the Evo. You're spending a lot more money unless you want to get that machine because you like it better. But if you're new to Lagree, you don't know which machine to buy, you're gonna be fine with the M3. The M3 is gonna give you also a lot of options because some people, and I hate to say that, but some people like to use the Megaformer to do Pilates. So if you're one of those person at home and you wanna use the Megaformer, we have a lot of Pilates studios right now converting to Lagree. I'm even sure that the word converting is, needed, They want to have the Megaformer. The Megaformer is the best, there's no close comparison. I am gonna do a video comparing the Reformer to the Megaformers, and you're gonna see it just day and night. So a lot of Pilates studios buy the Megaformer. If you are a Pilates studio, you want the Megaformer in your Pilates studio, the M3 is it. You're gonna have probably the most joy with that machine because you can do all your laying on your back exercise and your spine, long spine stretch, short spine stretch, your froggy, leg press, plie first position, second position. I hate to say that, but the M3 would be the machine for you at home, okay? You want to do an exercise, this is more core, more endurance, all that stuff, then I would say definitely the M3s. Both machines are gonna ship the same way. You need to create those machines, you need to freight those machines, you're gonna pay the exact same amount of money to ship those machines. There's not really a difference between those two megas. And then I think that's about it. M3 has been in use in many studios. It's been really the workhorse for Lagree for many years, and it's a fantastic machine. The M3s, you're not gonna regret either. All these anchoring points do make a difference. So here you have it. Here's the difference between the M3 and the M3s. If you have any questions, please email us, info@lagreefitness.com. And then if there's anything that we missed, let us know, and then we'll be more than happy to edit those videos and then just add it. We wanna make sure you have all this information before you make your purchase. All right, so anyway, good luck. And again, my name is Sébastien Lagree. Thank you for watching.